Welcome to the second module of Production and Service System Planning Part 1. So the second module is mainly covering the forecasting methods, but in this video lecture we are going to talk about what is forecasting, why it is important. Okay, but before discussing what is forecasting, why it is important, as well as what are the different methods we can use to predict the demand or to forecast the sales. So before discussing that one, let's discuss what is the production planning and what is the role of the forecasting and production planning and what kind of different type of decisions we are taking while to develop the different production plans. So when I am saying the different production plans, so we are going to talk about the hierarchy, which mean certain production plans are developed at an aggregate level and certain production plans are developed at the individual product level. So we will discuss this in detail. So let's discuss. So the outline of this entire module is that is we are going to talk about the production planning, hierarchical production planning decisions, forecasting, type of forecasting methods, which is qualitative and the quantitative. So in this video lecture, we will cover till over here, and then in the next video we will start talking about from the time series forecasting. So let me discuss what is the production planning. So how we can define this production planning? That means using certain set of resources or the raw material, okay, to perform to develop the production plan, as well as you can say that we are using these resources as well as the raw material to convert the inputs, which mean the raw material, into the finished goods or the services which we are providing to the customers. Okay, the idea behind it, the good production plan must be using appropriate resources, appropriate raw material in order to meet the customer demand efficiently as well as economically, or you can say effectively, right? So the benefits of a good production plan is that we would be able to deliver the product or the services on time, as well as the benefit of good production plan would be able to we would be able to reduce the production cost, and we can deliver or you can say produce the product efficiently as well as effectively. Okay, similarly we would be quickly able to identify if is there any you can say variation in terms of the resource usage or any other thing, we can cater it, and then we can remove those errors. Then we can minimize the inventory. Okay, so while minimizing the inventory, that means we are minimizing the financial wastages or the investments, as well as we would be able to achieve the sustainable production cycle, right? So a good production plan would always give you the better understanding or the better way to produce the product or provide the services by using lesser resources, lesser materials, and we would be able to effectively plan the production activities, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, that in a production plan, we are basically taking a hierarchical decision. So, when we are saying the hierarchical type of the decision, which means certain decisions are we are doing at the aggregate level, and then we are disaggregating these aggregate planning towards the detailed planning, and then scheduling can be done. So the aggregate planning, or you can say the detailed planning, we needed basically starting always from the forecasting part. Okay, so that means the ultimate goal of any production plan is to meet the demand of the customer. Okay, whatever the demand we have, so we have to meet that one. So in order to develop the aggregate level production plan, we need the forecasting of the aggregate demand. So what does that mean? So if I am working in a home appliance company, okay, and they are basically producing the number of kind of air conditions, okay, so they may be producing model A type of air condition, they may be producing model B, as well as model C. So all these models are basically indicating a same product, which is the air condition. Okay, so if I am going to add the demand of this one, demand of this one, demand of this one, so which means if we sum up this one, so that is going to be the aggregate demand, right? So we can collect the historical data, okay, regarding the sales of model A, model B, model C, and sum it up. That means we have the historical aggregate demand, and using that aggregate demand, we are going to predict the future. That is the forecasting using the aggregate demand or using the sales data, okay, or aggregate sales, right? So in order to forecast it, we also have to define the planning horizon, or in terms of here, if I'm talking about with respect to the forecasting, which is also known as the forecast horizon. So forecast horizon means how much period ahead you would like to predict, right? Whether you would like to predict 1 period ahead, or a 2 period ahead, or a 4 period ahead. So that period could be a day, or a week, or a month, okay, or a year. But generally, when we are talking about the aggregate demand, it involves a month, or a quarter, okay, or a year, right? But most probably, when we are going to take with respect to the aggregate production demand, so the demand forecast, the data we are using a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, right? So once we have done the forecast of the aggregate demand, okay, now we know that in future, the next 6 months, every month, what would be the predicted demand we have. So based on that predicted demand or the sales, we are going to develop the aggregate production plan, which is also based on the product family level. Okay, so this aggregate production plan is based on the aggregate, or you can say the product family level, which means the air condition, not how much quantity we should produce product A, B, and C. We are mainly talking about how much air condition we are going to produce in month one, in month two, or month three, or in quarter one, in quarter two, and quarter three, which we have predicted the demand. Okay, so the main thing in aggregate production plan is that we have to meet this forecasted or the aggregate demand. But the idea is that we would like to minimize the total aggregate production cost. So that total aggregate production cost is the combination of the total inventory in that particular time period. Once again, the time period could be the month, quarter, okay. So how much inventory we should have in that time period, which means in that month or in that quarter, how much quantity we should produce in that time period, how much workforce we should have in that time period. So when we are saying the inventory, we should have how much quantity we are going to produce, how much workforce we should have. Okay, so all these are basically also indicating that we are going to bear certain costs against these factors. Workforce against the workforce, against the you can say the inventory, as well as the quantity. So a good aggregate production plan is going to such a aggregate production plan where we have the minimum total cost, which is the sum of inventory cost, production cost, as well as the workforce cost. Okay. But when we are going to develop, obviously we have certain constraints as well. But right now we are briefly talking about what is aggregate production plan. So I hope you got the idea. So while we are developing the aggregate production plan, so we are going to take the decision that in every particular time period, how much inventory we should have, how much quantity we are going to produce in that time period, and how much workforce we should have in that time period. Okay, so based on this decision, a good aggregate production plan must be producing a minimum cost while picking those variables. So once we have this aggregate production plan, then we are going to develop the master production schedule, which is basically every individual product based. Okay, this is basically every individual product based production plan. Okay, so every individual product means, So here we have the production plan of the air condition, but now we are going to talk about over here is how much model A air condition we are going to produce, how much product B air condition we are going to produce, how much product C we are going to produce. Okay, while we should have to make sure that it shouldn't be violating the aggregate production plan. So that means this is going to be the two-way process. Okay, so once we have the aggregate production plan, we are going to disaggregating in order to identify that every product must be meeting the aggregate level of the air condition aggregate production plan. So right now you just make sure that what is the difference between the aggregate production plan and the master production schedule is. So this is the production plan based on the product family level. So this is the production plan based on the every individual product level. Okay, or you can say the end product or the finish, every finish SKUs, stock keeping unit, or the end product level. So once I have this master production schedule, we are going to develop the MRP, that is called as the material requirement planning. Okay, so to produce every model A air condition, okay, what kind of material we are going to use, right? So in order to produce one air condition of model A, how many compressor I needed, how many screws I needed, okay, so how many bodies I needed, right? So different components or the sub assembly components I needed to produce this model A air condition. So these materials, that mean a plan of that material is going to be called as the material requirement plan. Okay. Okay, if we are back to over this aggregate production plan, so once again, this aggregate production plan is also giving us related to the inventory management related decisions. Okay, which is might be related to the raw material, how much we should buy. Okay, so that is also going to be the input of the inventory management. So, in the next module of the forecasting, we are going to talk about this inventory management and then we will discuss later. But first of all, let's discuss what is forecasting, why it is important. Okay. So, what is forecasting? So, how we can define? So, it's a business function that is going to attempt to predict the sales or the use of the product. Okay. So, the ultimate thing is that is in order to that predicted demand or sales, however, we would be able to purchase or the manufacturing the appropriate quantities in advance. Okay, as well as you can say that the forecasting is basically predicting the future events. Okay, that is going to be used in the planning as we have discussed earlier. So your forecasting must be as good as possible, and you can say as accurate as possible. If your forecasting is not good or not accurate, so that means if you are doing the over forecasting, what will happen? So the end is going to be you have the excess of inventory. Okay, so that means example is if the actual demand is 100 units and you have produced 120 units, so that means the 20 unit we have produced the extra and that goes to the inventory, which is indicating the excess of inventory or the overproduction quantity, and against that you are going to bear the cost. Okay, similarly, if you are under forecasting it, which means if the actual demand is 100, but you have forecasted that the demand is 80, so that means that can be indicating the loss of sales. Okay, or you have underproduction, or you can say the inventory shortages, which means the customer is going to maybe lose it. Okay, or maybe you have the late delivery, which means you are going to produce in the next month and you are saying that we are going to deliver the remaining quantity in the next month and you are going to bear the back order cost, okay, or the shortages cost, right? And so the ultimate goal is that our forecasting of the demand and the sales should be as accurate as possible. However, we would be able to save ourselves from the over forecasting as well as the under forecasting, because if we are over forecasting the demand or under forecasting the demand, the end result we are going to bear certain set of cost. So in the terms of the inventory, we are going to bear the inventory cost, or in terms of shortages, we are going to bear the late delivery or the back order cost or the shortages cost, right? So as far as if we are talking about how we can predict the demand, so there is a two-way, or you can say the two methods or the two approaches we can use. One is the qualitative method, and the other is the quantitative methods. So the qualitative method we can use when we do not have any data available, or you can say historical data. So the method we can use is the market research and the Delphi method. Okay. So what are those? I'm going to talk about in a minute. So as far as the quantitative techniques we can use when we have the numerical information available. Okay. So the quantitative method can also be applied in a two-way, like either you have different data available against a different factors point of view or with respect to the time. So that in detail we will talk about later. But first of all, let's discuss what are these qualitative methods are. Okay, so first of all, we are talking about the market research. So, the market research is basically a systematic way in order to gather the data from the external, or you can say the end customer or the consumer, okay, using the technique of the survey approach. Okay, so these surveys are basically conducting by that particular organization, or maybe they can hire the agents to conduct that survey or to conduct that market research in order to identify what kind of product the custom consumer wants from us, how much quantity they want, when they want. Okay, so the advantage is obviously we are getting the information from the consumer level, from the end customer level. So that information is not available anywhere else, right? So, but this survey, gathering this survey data and analyzing this data is a very important skill is required. Obviously, first of all, what kind of questions we are going to ask from the consumer, okay, in order to identify that what kind of product they are needed, when they are needed, what kind of features they want. So this required the high knowledge as well as the skill. Once we have conducted to develop that survey, and then once we are going to conduct that survey and we collected the data, and then we are going once again a good knowledge and the skill level to analyze data in order to get the information. Okay, so I hope you got the idea what is the market research approach in order to collect the data related to the future forecast, for the future forecast of the product as well as the services or the sales of the product. The next technique which you can use is called as the Delphi approach. So the Delphi method is basically, first of all, you are going to pick from that business the individual experts. So the number of experts, it's up to you how many number of experts you would like to pick. Maybe five, maybe eight or 10. So it's up to you how many experts you are going to pick. So once you have picked the experts, so you are going to identify one coordinator who is going to coordinate with all those experts. Okay. So that coordinator is going to give the questionnaire related to the product, okay, or related to the market in order to identify the you can say experts opinion on the related to that product or the sales related to that product. Okay, so those individual experts may not be knowing with each other, or may not knowing what they are responding to that coordinator, but this coordinator is know every expert. Okay, and he is going to provide the information, or you should say questionnaire to every individual experts and getting the feedback from that one. Okay, once that coordinator is getting back the every individual expert's response, he is going to compile all the information and sending back to the expert. Okay, so once they are going to back to the expert, so every individual experts is going to provide their information. Okay, so they extracted the in a first round, that coordinator is going to extract the information what the every individual expert is saying. After the compilation, so that compilation information is going to send back to those experts. Okay, and those experts are going to review it. Okay, and they can revise their choice or revise their opinion based on the information that is provided. Okay, so this process is going to be continue, or you can say this process is going to be the long term process. Now, until that you are going to get the consensus, or you can say the accurate consensus related to the forecast of the demand, right? So as you can see that because this is going to be back and forth until we are going to get the accurate consensus on the forecast of that product demand. So this is going to be a long term process. Okay, and it is a time consuming process. Okay, but the best is the idea is that is going to be the long term forecast as well as the technological changes those experts are going to take into cater in order to identify what would be the demand of the product, or these could be the based on their opinion would be the sales of the forecast. Okay, I hope you got the idea what is market research as well as what is the Delphi method. Now, if we are talking about the quantitative, so as I mentioned earlier, the quantitative forecasting methods are the two types. One is the casual forecasting methods, and other is the time series. So the casual forecasting methods are based on the multiple variables. Like if I am going to give the example that the sales of the forecast is based on the price of the product as well as the area in which we are going to introduce that product. Maybe age of the customer maybe is going to affect the sales or demand of the forecast. So based on the multiple factor, if you have the historical data, and then we are going to apply the causal based forecasting method. So when we are saying causal based, that means we are talking about cause and effect relationship. As I have given you the example, that the demand of the product is based on the age of the customer, is based on the area from where that customer is. So that means the demand of that product is the effect. The causes are the age of the customer, the area from where he or she is, as well as you can say the age of that customer is, right? So, in order to identify or in order to predict the future, the technique we are going to use is the regression based technique. What is this? We will talk about later in detail. But the other is that we can also apply the quantitative forecasting method is the time series based forecasting methods. So if we are going to predict the based on the time series, that means we are going to use only the one variable, which is the time. That means we are using the historical data of that product. So historical data mean the historical sales of the data or the historical demand of the data, and based on that time period we are going to predict. And how we are going to predict is we are going to focus on the pattern of the data based on the time. So when we are saying the pattern of the data, which mean how much fluctuation is there any trend, is there any seasonality component is there. Okay, so we will talk about in detail while we were talking about time series. So what is level, what is trend, and how many type of trend is there, what is seasonality, and so on. Okay, so in order to predict this time series forecasting, the model techniques we are going to use is the time series forecasting, which is the number of techniques. So what are those, we will talk about in the next lecture. So thank you so much, see you in the next video.